Hi everyone, I'm Brian and welcome back to the Gastrotale Devlog. For those of you tuning in for the first time, Gastrotale is a multiplayer roguelite, think Risk of Rain or Hades, that you can play right in your web browser. It's been a hot minute since I uploaded my last episode, but rest assured I've been hard at work over the past month on combat mechanics. I'm eager to showcase my progress, so without further ado, let's dive in. Like in the last devlog, my friend Elliot will be joining us, and we're once again represented by these red boxes. With this update, however, the server can now spawn enemies, which are currently rendered as these purple boxes. Enemies are big dummies right now. They'll just follow players and attack every few seconds. Ow. In turn, we can also attack them. We can also chain together attacks for more DPS. And to really style on the AI, we can use this dash skill to close gaps and dodge attacks. This is super exciting to me. Gastrotale feels more and more like a real game with every passing day. I cranked out a lot of netcode to get to this point, and I want to highlight some of that work in the remainder of this devlog. But before we move on, I want to give a huge shout out to everyone who watched my last video, especially my new subscribers. Growing up, my mom always warned me about strangers on the internet, but really, you aren't such a bad bunch. I can't thank you all enough for supporting my small-time indie project with your kind words and encouragement. They really do mean the world to me. With that in mind, let's hop into a debug map and break down these new mechanics. Let's start with the player's attack, which is represented as the weapon trail you see here. There's nothing too fancy about the actual graphics, it's just a plain textured with an animated sprite sheet. Since Gastrotale is a networked multiplayer game, performing the attack is a bit more involved due to the client-server architecture. To illustrate, let's suppose there are two players, Alice and Bob, who are connected to the game server. Alice's perspective is on the left, Bob's on the right, and the server logs in the center. When Alice clicks, Alice's client renders the weapon trail immediately and then sends an attack event to the server. The server processes the attack for things like hit detection and then informs Bob's client about the attack. Upon receiving the server update, Bob's client will render a weapon trail around Alice. For Alice, attacking feels lagless because she gets immediate visual feedback of her attack regardless of her ping to the server. This approach is known as client-side prediction and is used extensively throughout Gastrotale and most other modern multiplayer games. I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to learn more. Now, all of that logic was just for displaying the attack. The logic gets even more complicated if the player hits an enemy. I've disabled the visual on-hit effects here to highlight the enemy knockback. Gastrotale implements this by applying a decelerating force to the enemy. In my code, I call this an impulse. Every tick, the server will apply the impulse and send down the new enemy position to all clients. With the new position, the server also sends the list of all impulses so the client can continue applying impulses even if it briefly loses connection to the server. This can be surprisingly common. You might be familiar with the term packet loss, for example. To demonstrate, here's a side-by-side comparison of an impulse with client-side prediction on the left and without on the right. As you can see, if there's any packet loss, the enemy stutters during the impulse. We'll touch on this later, but impulses are useful for more than just knockbacks, so I added a constant force variant as well. Here's a comparison of constant force on the left and decelerating force on the right. Of course, we also want to add some visual feedback on hitting an enemy, as it feels a little lacking right now. There's tons of information about this online. Some devs call it oomph, others call it juice or game feel. These names all bother me to varying degrees, but at the end of the day, we do want connecting a hit to feel satisfying. One way to achieve this is to flash white and freeze the enemy for a split second. This feels juicier already, but we can do even better by adding screen shake. The screen shake you see here is implemented by rotating the camera with Perlin noise and is configurable for light trauma or heavy trauma. Next, let's talk about the dash skill. Fortunately, we can leverage the same primitives from the slash attack to implement our dash. We send an event to the server on hitting the shift key, which in turn applies a constant impulse to the player. The only new action is the dust trail that the player leaves behind. This is implemented with a particle system, so let's switch to the Gastrotale editor for a closer look. Most engines default to glowy and alpha blended particles, and as you can see, the engine I'm using, Babylon.js, is no different. This clearly doesn't match the toon-shaded art style of Gastrotale, so I implemented my own particle shader. The shader itself is pretty simple. I feed it an input map of this circle with alpha in the red channel and base shading in the green. The shader just multiplies values from this map with the color and alpha provided by the particle system. All that's left to do is configure some parameters like emit rate, blend mode, lifetime, and we have a dust trail. I implemented a few other small features like player respawns. For this, I added network synchronized timers to respawn, say, 3 seconds after dying. I'll spare you the details though, since they're handled much like impulses. Also, these timers are used for the dash and attack cooldowns. Finally, there's this new player vitals GUI that shows health and player name. It's very much a work in progress, but I thought it'd be fun to include for this video. And that's all I have for this devlog. Thank you so much for watching, and if you're at all interested in future updates, please subscribe below or follow me on Twitter at brkhoot. I'd really appreciate it. Take care, and see you next time.